Without exaggeration, social media saved our family. We had a business that had been hacked. We lost a big account after that. We had to let go of all of our staff. We lost our office space. We had a crazy huge amount of debt. We had the notice on the front door of our house. It was the whole bit. It was like as dire as it can get without actually tipping over. And social media came along and Disney came along, and it was like a lifeline. It was like a life preserver that had been thrown in. So it was also kind of like we had struck gold in the backyard. And it's like, okay, kids, this is what we do now. Everybody get out here. If you're sick of eating lentils and you'd like to keep a house, then let's get out there and make some fun videos, which was weird, but at the same time, I'm so thankful.
Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hello, Reflectives, and welcome to episode 334 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre. You might recognize him from various visual memes you've seen. Maybe some parody music videos.
I'm a dad, that's what I do. I get the groceries when I'm asked to. The hair on my head's getting thin, that's true. But I got lots on my body. Me and your mom said clean your room, but I'll probably forget about it real soon. You can find me with a beer by the barbecue. I'm a dad, that's what I do.
Or even those dry humor monologues, often about Canadian culture.
Summers can be scorchers, non-stop sunshine, high temperatures, days spent at the beach, or times spent swimming in the lake. Then there's fall. The weather's still fairly mild, and the leaves on the trees put on a beautiful show. Time for cozy sweaters and long walks. Our winters can be very cold with lots of snow. Time for skiing, tobogganing, and staying warm by the fire. And spring? Spring in Canada is like cleaning up after a home invasion. You just want to forget what happened, but there's signs of a struggle everywhere. Spring in Canada is the promise of a romantic evening that starts with being kicked squarely in the nuts. Spring in Canada is nature's broken promise. We're promised flowers and beauty, and we get hung over winter. Spring in Canada is a lie. Canada has 4 seasons, all right. Summer, fall, winter, and betrayal. So if you're visiting Canada, pick the right time. It's very important that you pick the right time.
Brittlestar, the internet's favorite dad,
Unproven,
and I had a chance to sit down recently. Stewart Reynolds, as he's also known, his real name. Stewart and I sat down and chatted recently about his social media journey, the background of some of the great shtick that he's put online, as well as his latest book, Welcome to the Stupidpocalypse, Survival Tips for the Dummageddon. We talk about his writing for both the book as well as the writing for skits and the comedy that he does. We talk about his music. We talk about all kinds of fantastic things. And that's coming up later in this episode. But first, let's hear a word about this episode's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by a couple of my own books.
I know you, don't I? I'm usually very good with names, but I'll be damned if I haven't forgotten yours.
You stole my cab.
I've never stolen anything in my life.
I hailed a cab on Park Avenue this afternoon, and before I could get in it, you stole it.
You're the guy who tried to get my cab. I knew you, yeah. You scared the bejesus out of me.
If you know this scene and what movie it's from, then you may recognize the book John Candy is holding in his hand. Well, the character Del Griffith is holding in his hand. Because in the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, John Candy's seen holding a paperback that reads in the original script that Del Griffith is reading a pornographic novel at the airport. Well, that's the first scene where Neil and Del meet in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and I've always been fascinated by books that appear in TV and movies, and when I saw that, I knew I had to create a trivia guide to planes, trains, and automobiles called The Canadian Mounted, and it looks pretty much exactly like this book that John Candy was holding. It is available in mass market paperback and in ebook wherever books are sold. If you're a fan of this John Hughes 80s classic, you'll probably find something enjoyable in the book. Not just trivia about that prop book that was used in the film itself, which was a real book at one time, but all kinds of trivia pieces about the film, about the soundtrack, about the actors, about the script, about cutscenes, etc. Or if you're interested in the world's best Christmas film, Die Hard, I also have a book called Yippee-Ki-Yay, Mother. Well, you know the rest. So Yippee-Ki-Yay, Mother, a trivia guide to Die Hard, and The Canadian Mounted, a trivia guide to planes, trains, and automobiles are available wherever books are sold. You can find links to them over at books2read.com/Mark Leslie.
I knew you.
Well, the corporate sponsorship or links to my own products help support this podcast, but your support as patrons help support my time in producing this weekly show. And I want to say a huge shout out and welcome to all my patrons who support this podcast over at patreon.com/darkreflections, and a hearty re-welcome to Joanne Carson, who's increased her membership level as a patron of the Stark Reflections podcast. Just a reminder that for $1, $3, or $5 a month, you get access to additional content meant specifically for patrons to give them insights, additional audio feeds, and additional other content that I post there from time to time. So thank you to Joanne and all of the patrons who support this podcast at patreon.com/Stark Reflections. It means so much to me that you're willing to throw that support behind this weekly podcast. And now for comments. Recent comments, speaking of Patreon, Maria Stahl had commented over for the last episode 334, which was a reprise of my Vegas presentation, 10 Things You Likely Didn't Know About Draft to Digital. And over on the comments on Patreon, Maria says, "Thanks so much for sharing, Mark. I learned a few new things about D2D." Thanks, Maria. That's the whole point. Wanted to share some of these great free tools that you have access to. Because I always forget about those free tools. So I figure, and if I work with a company and I forget about the tools, what about all the amazing authors out there who don't remember or don't realize the cool free tools that are available? And over on the Twitter sphere, I refuse to call it X, Edwin Downward said, in his latest Stark Reflections podcast, Mark hit me with 2 things about Draft to Digital I didn't know, taking away my ability to suggest he owes me a cider should we ever meet in person. Now, Edwin's talking about the comment I made. So when I was doing this presentation, and this is the audio from the presentation in Vegas a few weeks ago, I did say, if there's anyone in the audience who knows all of the things I'm about to share, drinks are on me for the rest of the day. And that's kind of cool. But you know what, Edwin? I do owe you a cider if we ever have the chance to meet in person, because I love the fact that you're constantly sharing comments over on the Twitter sphere. If you, dear listener, want to leave a comment for this episode or any episode of the podcast, feel free to leave comments over at starkreflections.ca. You can leave comments over on the Patreon as well, Twitter, the YouTube channel as well, and I'm going to try and get caught up on some of my backlog of comments in the next few weeks. But that's it for the pre-matter for this episode. Let's get in to my interview with Stewart Reynolds, a.k.a. Brittlestar. Hey, Stewart. Welcome to the Stark Reflections podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
And I guess I should have asked this before we began recording, but is it okay if I call you Stewart? Is it Mr. Brittlestar? What should I call you?
Mr. Star. I've been called much worse things. I'll answer to Stewart. I'll answer to Brittlestar. Actually, what's really funny is there's people who have known me for like a number of years who have now just referred to calling me as Brittlestar or Brit, which is weird. I mean,
Brittlestar
again,
Brit. Okay.
I'll
All right.
just answer to anything. It's fine.
Where did that name come from? What was the inspiration for that?
So that name came from back in 2004. It was a band name initially. I was doing my first album with a guy named Stephen Duffy, who was like a founding member of Duran Duran and worked with Robbie Williams, and he was working with Robbie Williams at the time and the Bare Naked Ladies and all that kind of stuff. And I was really excited. I was doing this album with him. He was getting help from him. And but then I thought to myself, there's no way that someone's going to wear a t-shirt that says Stewart Reynolds on it. It's just not a really cool t-shirt name. I mean, I like my name, but it's not a really cool t-shirt name. So my oldest son, Owen, and I would read, he was 3 at the time, we would read this marine life book before bed. And there were these starfish called brittle stars, and they are kind of like the ugliest of the starfish species, but they're like long and spindly, and they can see through their tentacles, and they defecate out of their mouths. And I was like, cool, that's going to be perfect. And so I just jammed brittle stars together and took away the S at the end. And it kind of stuck. I sort of like when I started doing social media stuff with videos and stuff in 2013, for real, I had all the socials already and the domain name. So I was like, okay, I'll just keep that. It's easy to remember, which is good.
Oh, wow. So I see you've got at least 3 guitars behind you on the wall in the studio. That was, I know you still do music because I've seen you perform in some of your social media clips, but do you still actually perform when you're not doing parody and funny stuff like that?
No, not so much anymore. I mean, I think that what's cool about what I do now, or what's for me anyway, is that I get to kind of scratch the itch a little bit of performing music, like playing instruments and writing music and singing and all that kind of stuff. I get to do that through the videos. And what's fun about it is that, when I was doing music, as a full on thing, I was kind of, not that I was totally trapped in a genre, but I was kind of like, I knew what kind of music I wanted to make. And it was a specific type of, pop rock music. And now that I do the videos, it's like, oh, I can do anything now. I can do like 80s hair band. I can do, vaudeville. I can do whatever I want. And it's kind of cool. I like that. It does. Again, it's like it scratches that itch, so I can come down and go, I'm going to write a country song today. Sure. Why not?
Why not? Yeah, exactly. So music in your background, obviously, and writing too. I mean, we're going to be talking about your new book, and I'm loving it.
Thank you.
But were you always interested in writing as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, I've always been writing stuff since I was a kid, not really thinking, oh, I want to be a writer someday. I never thought that. But then as I, actually really kind of came to a pinnacle during the pandemic when I'd be like, oh, I have to write I want to do something. I want to get this off my chest. I want to vent about this. I want to like talk about this topic. And it's maybe not going to make the greatest video. So maybe I could turn it into an essay instead. So I started like a newsletter, and that was great. And then I quickly realized as well with writing that after having made videos, full time since 2013, it's way easier to become very elaborate in your settings and backdrops and stuff when you're writing about it, rather than actually having to do it on camera. So I can write these fantastic things happening, and I don't have to worry about the actual logistics of how to do that and how to portray that on screen. I can just be like, whatever, it's all good. So yeah, I love it. I mean, it's great. I would love to do more of it too.
Well, I'm just speaking of some of your videos. Some of them you're obviously standing in your front doorway or in your house or in the yard or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and I think the setting is coming from your words, from your imagination, and your brilliant delivery, obviously.
Oh, thank you.
Have you always had? As a performer, I know you've done music, but have you always had that performance aspect to you, like when growing up?
I think, a little bit. I've been, I sort of like tongue-in-cheekly, this is very heavily tongue-in-cheekly say that I've been practicing to be famous my whole life. Sort of like how will I carry myself in a media interview? How will I, if I'm on television, how will I sit? What will I look like? What kind of things will I do? And there's literally all that stuff that floats around in my head, which is pretty narcissistic probably and horrible, but it doesn't matter. It served me well. And I haven't used it for evil, so that's good. But I think, I'm a fan of music and TV and film and videos and social media videos. I'm a fan of that stuff. So I kind of approach it is try to hard to approach it from the perspective of the audience, of like the viewer. What would they like to see? Okay, if I'm watching this, I would like to see me do this. That'd be cool. Or if I'm watching this video clip on social media, I'd like to say this in this style. And I think that's kind of where my head is at when I'm not really necessarily, I want to be a great performer. And I just want to deliver it in a way that's going to be the most effective way to get the result that I want, which is going to be, hopefully, usually comedy. So
Now, a lot of the content. So you said this started in 2013 when you started to do the short videos and that kind of content.
yeah, that was when we started doing this full time. I had done a little bit of messing around the year prior. So like 2000, well, literally February of 2013 is when I started messing around properly on social media on an app
Right.
called Vine, which was 6.4-second looping videos. And it was, it was just kind of fun. And I didn't know there was anything to it until we had some success with some viral videos. I did Put Your Finger on the Screen, which made it look like when you moved the video up and down, you were having an effect on what was happening on the video. Like I was spilling water, you were knocking stuff down, and that took off. And then we did another one of those and that took off. We were like, we can't afford to keep wrecking stuff. So I came up with a video called Summer's Not Over, where I walk down the sidewalk and I see a leaf falling down and I pick the leaf up and I staple it back to the tree and I yell at the tree, "Summer's not over. Don't you quit on me." And that went really big too. And then Disney contacted us and hired us. And I was like, oh, wow. And that was when we discovered that you can actually make a living doing this. And so we were like, if we can pay our bills, spend time with the kids who were still only 11 and 14 at the time, and then, and travel, then why wouldn't we do this? So, I mean, it hasn't been smooth sailing, but we've been doing it full time since 2013, which is great.
So when you say we, is that your wife, your partner in
Yeah.
this? Or? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So my wife, Shannon, and our kids, Owen, the oldest, and Gregor, the youngest, all kind of involved at the beginning because when we started doing social media, without exaggeration, social media saved our family. It was, we had a business that had been hacked. We lost a big account after that. We had to let go of all of our staff. We lost our office space. We had a crazy huge amount of debt. We had the notice on the front door of our house. It was the whole bit. It was like as dire as it can get without actually tipping over. And social media came along and Disney came along and it was like, oh, it was like a lifeline. It was like a life preserver that had been thrown in. So it was also kind of like we had struck gold in the backyard. And it's like, okay, kids, this is what we do now. Everybody get out here. If you're sick of eating lentils and you'd like to keep a house, then let's get out there and make some fun videos, which was weird. But at the same time, I'm so thankful.
Oh man, amazing! Actually, that's happened. Now you said Disney came along, and I know you've done some accounts like Kentucky Fried Chicken. I think was one of the largest
Yeah.
ones, right?
Yeah. So that was back in 2017. And that was Explaining Canada Day to Americans. And so the Explaining Canada Day to Americans video was a script that I had written about Canada Day, where I thought the idea that would be cool to have Canada and America just as regular neighbors in the suburbs. And I'm playing Canada and I play America, but with no glasses, so I'm undetectable. With
Clark
a slight,
Kent.
exactly, with a reverse Clark Kent. With like, I was doing my best American accent as the American character, but apparently it was more North Carolina specific accent. So I'll take it. It's fun.
Right.
But yeah, I did that. And it was the biggest branded video in the world that year. And it beat out Nike by 10 million views. And I think now it's got over 65, coming up on 70 million views in total since that day it was released,
Wow.
which is crazy. Yeah.
So I want to dig a little bit into the creative process of
Sure.
that. Is it writing it on paper? Is it brainstorming with Shannon? Do you have whiteboards? How do you guys put these things together and then decide how to produce them, et cetera?
I mean, we've kind of gone through all those steps before. I mean, when we initially started making videos, it would just be a concept. It'd be like, oh, we'll just sort of say, this would be kind of a funny thing if we set up this concept. you kind of know what the setup is, and you kind of know what the punchline has to be or what the result has to be. And we just kind of wing it. And then about 5 years ago, I really got into writing scripts because I was like, oh, if I take my time on this, I can pick the right word. Like I can pick a word that's funnier than another word that I might use.
Right.
And that became really important to me, sort of to do that, which is then that kind of led into the monologue style videos of like being able to be really picky about the kind of words I'm using and how I'm saying them and how they're being delivered and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no, the ideas are usually written in notes, the notes app on my iPhone, and some of them are just left to wither and die. Other than turn into things. I have a few ideas that I've written down. Kind of the oldest one is about 4 years old now, where it's like it's still waiting to happen, and I'm
Right.
desperate to make it happen. And yeah, I mean, we also call our living room the place where ideas come to die, because when you go into our living room when the boys are home and if I pitch an idea, there's 3 people ready to tell me how stupid that idea is. So yeah.
which perfect theme for the book we're going to be talking about very shortly. But and that speaking of that partnership, you are the face of the Brittlestar brand, but you're obviously working as part of a team. But you did have for a time during the pandemic, especially, where the two of you hosted a morning program.
Yeah.
From your home.
That's right. Yeah, we did a show called The Morning Show Thing, and which is coming back in a different form, but it's coming back in a little bit.
It is? Oh, wow.
It is. Yeah. So it's coming back. It's going to be slightly different the way it was than it was previously, but it'll be fun. It'll be cool. Yeah, but that we actually started The Morning Show Thing back in 2015.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And we did, I had to really convince Shannon to be part of it because she hates being on camera. But then she quickly realized that we had built up a nice community of people who were disparate group of people, which made it fun because there was, people from the Bible Belt in the US, and there was, some gay couples in Newfoundland, and it was like, this is great. This is perfect. This is what we want. We want this like really weird mix of people all kind of hanging out and being nice to each other. That's what kind of the goal is. Yeah, and we did that, and we would do it the last sort of 3 years of it doing it. We were doing it on every Friday morning, live on Facebook, and it was great. It was super fun. And again, we're going to kind of bring it back, but it's going to be a little bit different. And that's because the landscape changes, like the tech landscape changes all the time.
I'm so excited. I know Liz, my partner, is going to be excited, and that was the other thing is, so Liz loved being behind the camera, but hated getting in front of the camera. It wasn't until. I'm curious about how you convinced Shannon, because it wasn't until I had a parody
money. It was money.
Video.
Money convinced her.
What did?
Money
convinced her. I was like, what convinced her to get in front of the camera? Yeah.
She can be bought. That's basically it. Her reluctance to be on camera goes all the way back to that first Disney deal that we had, where they were like, we'd like the whole family to be in these videos. And she was like, no, I don't want to be on camera. Too many people are going to see these videos. And then I literally showed her how much they're paying us, and she was like, where do you want me to stand? What are my lines?
Oh, I love that. That is so cool. Wow. Your morning program is coming back in a different form. I look forward to that. But now, speaking of looking forward to, I was so excited to see a new released book this fall of 2023, for those of you listening to this in the future. But so we got Welcome to the Stupidpocalypse. If I pronounced that properly.
You did. Perfect. It was amazing.
And I mean, you picked really small words there, right?
Yeah, exactly. Welcome to the Stupidpocalypse, survival tips for the Dumageddon. It's like a Fallout Boy song title or something. It's a really fun book. It's when I got asked if I'd be interested in writing a book, I was like, yes. However, it has to be like a quick read. Because that means it's going to be a quick write, and that'll be good for my attention span, which has been chewed up since doing social media for 10 years. So yeah, I mean, it's a book full of essays. It covers everything from marriage to politics to Canada to the US to social media to technology. It was super fun to write. I really enjoyed writing it, and it was able, for my videos that are about like a minute and a half usually, around there. I mean, that's only 200 or so words. That's it. That's not very many words. Whereas the essays in this book are 1,000 words, and they're still short essays. So, but it allowed me to kind of dig in a little more and hopefully make, make it a bit more fun and include more jokes and references and detail that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. So it was really fun.
Yeah, what I like about it is it's got these great shorter essays that they didn't even feel like 1,000 words. They felt like a lot
Yeah.
shorter, which
Yeah.
is, I guess, a good sign, right? As you're and last night when I was reading, I'm like, well, I'll just read one more essay.
That's how I get you.
Yeah, so that's fantastic. The difference in writing those things, I think, you talked about, but I'm curious about, you have such a brilliantly dry humor. When you deliver something in a video, it's clear that you're being sarcastic or whatever. Did you find any issues with trying to get that to translate onto like the printed page?
A little bit, but the publisher was great. My editor was great, Debbie in New York. I kind of emphasized the fact that I needed to have control over the formatting of the book and how sentences were spaced and how things happened, because I felt like, to me, like that's how I write my scripts as well, is that there'll be, like if there's two sentences together, that text is to be read quickly as like a big thought. And then there might be a standalone sentence, and then maybe like a broken down words on each individual lines and stuff. And that was to give it some rhythm and some pacing that you wouldn't get, like that you would normally get in a video, but you don't normally get in a book. But trying to convey that as much as possible. So it's almost like writing music for written comedy. It's kind of like, okay, here's how to read this. So you read it through in your mind, and hopefully the formatting kind of makes you stop and speed up the way you need to, and then drop a beat before you hit the punchline or something. I don't know. I mean, I tried. We'll see. I mean, it was fun. It was fun.
Well, it comes across, and because I'm familiar with your voice and watching you, listening to you, I'm hearing your. I went to see if there was an audiobook version, which I was going to ask about, but
soon, hopefully, yeah.
Oh, fantastic! I'll probably reread it as an audiobook because it'll be more fun. But I'm hearing your voice in my head as I'm reading it, and I remember last night when I was reading one of the chapters, you have a lot of parentheses and things like that, and there was a parentheses that says, "In fact, I'm going to go rename the chapter this." And of course, I stopped to go back and see what the chapter title was because I already forgot what it was, and you had so fun, like breaking the fourth wall or whatever it is in paper.
Yeah, I mean, I like that irreverence a lot. I think like there's in the acknowledgments of the book, I reference the fact that Douglas Adams and Judy Blume were both like major influences as far as reading and writing books were for me, because I think there's a notion that there's like a rule book that you have to play along with writing with books, and there really isn't. I mean, there's no rule book. I mean, it's a piece of art, it's a piece of content, whatever you want to call it, and you do what you have to do to make it enjoyable for the person who's consuming it, and that's the end goal.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it is enjoyable. Now, you said that a publisher approached you and said, would you be interested in doing a book? Is that how this came about?
Yeah. A literary agency in Toronto contacted me and said, would you be interested in writing a book? And I was like, I don't know if the money's good. And they said, well, let's see if we think we can get a decent deal. Like, we think people would be interested in this. And so they assigned me this particular agent, Wayne Arthurson, who's fantastic. He's in Edmonton, and him and I kind of came up with the book proposal idea, and then they shopped it around. There was a couple of offers right away, which was great. And then we held out for a couple more, and then there was this fantastic offer from Post Hill Press, which is owned by Simon & Schuster, but it's based in Nashville. And they were great to work with. What was really funny is that I think I'm the only non-US right-wing author they have on their roster, which is, it's an interesting place to be for me. I'll say that politely.
Well, so you brought up right wing, and there's a great chapter it's called "I'm a Groucho Marxist," which love the play on words. But you talked about the issue with left and right, and I love the way you get into that. And it's it's humorous, but it's also something that was like, yeah, there is an issue with just defining this big giant group.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake that people make, like humans make constantly. We all make constantly, and that we want to kind of compartmentalize people and put them into groups and stuff. And it's like they're the loosest groups ever. I mean, it's funny to me as left wing. It's like, well, I don't really consider myself left wing. I don't consider myself right wing. I've never been to a meeting of left wing or right wing people.
I
There's
didn't
no
get the
club.
invite.
There's no membership card or anything. It's just kind of it's just some sort of descriptor. So I think that's kind of silly, and we kind of get hung up on those things a bit too much, and it makes it hard to get into the nuance of discussion and compromise and moving forward as a group together, as humanity to move forward. If we're all stuck in their teams, it's silly. It becomes too much entertainment.
Oh wow, yeah. There's so many great things I want to dig into. So speaking of entertainment, in your typical style of humor,
Mhm.
on the cover you've got a forward by a
Yeah.
celebrity, an
Mhm.
afterword by a celebrity, and then
Yeah.
a middle word.
A middle word. Yeah,
So it's
exactly.
like,
Yeah.
what is? I look at. I mean, I've been a bookseller my whole life. I look at it and go, but you also had fun with the content there too. Are you willing to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the foreword is written by Ryan Reynolds. The middle word is written by Mary Trump, Donald's niece, and the afterword's written by Colin Mockery. And they're all actually written by those people. And I was so grateful that they
So they
said
actually
yes.
wrote
They
those.
actually wrote. They actually wrote those. I explained kind of what I was trying to achieve with it and what I was trying to have fun with it. There's a book by Eric Idle where he has on the front of it, it's like from the 70s, forward not by His Royal Highness Prince Charles. And I was like, that's a funny idea, but I want to take it a step further. I want to actually have the people actually write these forwards
Oh
and
wow.
be a little bit reticent about writing the forwards. And so, I mean, I think that Ryan's is heartfelt. I think that Mary's is heartfelt, and I think Colin's is confused, which is fine, which is good.
And these are obviously people you've been in contact with or collaborated with in other
Yeah,
ways.
which is so weird to me. It's so bizarre. Every now and then I catch myself like, it's Ryan is a super lovely guy and incredibly busy, but just he's been helpful and helped me a number of times, and with like advice and stuff like that and sort of guidance. And Mary is just so approachable and smart and reasonable. She really is my favorite Trump, I think, if you want to get down to it. And then Colin, of course, is like an icon. Like, he's a hero to me. I mean, I've been watching Colin on Whose Line Is It Anyway since I lived in the UK in the mid 90s. So he's been going a long time, and I've been a fan just as long.
Wow.
So to have him, like, to be able to text him and ask him questions and stuff is weird. It's like, oh, that's cool. I like
Well,
that.
that is amazing. Has he ever, because you have very similar glasses to Drew Carey, has he ever drawn any?
He hasn't, but he wouldn't be the first. That's for sure. Exactly. I tell people I'm sort of like, you're a bookseller. Maybe you'll get this joke. It's like the Animorphs book. I'm like the middle part of an Animorphs book cover between Drew Carey's journey between the beginning of his weight loss journey and the end of his weight loss journey. I'm somewhere in the middle. So.
So speaking of being self-deprecating in your humor, even on your website and in the branded, I believe it's on the book too, world's favorite dad, asterisk, not confirmed or
Yeah,
whatever.
unproven. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
unproven.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's fair. I mean, I want to be honest with the people. I want to get my marketing shtick in there, but also be honest so people know what they're buying. Exactly.
Yeah. And you open the book talking about parenting. So you talked about
Yeah.
your two boys as
Mhm.
well. And you have such humor. Like, even when you talk about your marriage and your relationship with your wife, you ask the boys not to read it because you're going to be going and mowing the lawn. But
Exactly.
you talk about the digital, so actually, and as I'm a father of a 19-year-old, so it's like
Mm.
I'm just nodding along with all this parental
Right. Yeah,
wisdom
exactly.
and advice, and then you was like, hey, if you don't if you don't have kids or whatever, go write your own book and offer your own advice.
Exactly.
There's a great chapter in there on the digital umbilical cord.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
So, I mean, this idea that there's a couple of aspects to it, just in its really broadest sense, is you can't shield your kids from social media. You can't shield your kids from the internet, because the internet is just a part of life now, and social media is just a part of life. And the internet and social media are just the big bad world. So it's like, as much as you prepare your kids to go downtown by themselves, you got to prepare them to be online. But you also kind of want to go to the places that they go to too. Like, you kind of want, if they're going downtown to some pool hall, you should probably figure out like what kind of place this is, just at least, at the very least, so you can, what they're talking about. And at the worst, so you can tell them, don't go there. It's terrible. I saw someone get stabbed. And it's the same with social media. It's like if they're on Snapchat, if your kids are younger and they're on Snapchat, or if they're on TikTok, you should be on there. You don't have to be monitoring everything they're doing, but you should be on there so that you are part of that world. And oh, I saw this on TikTok the other day. That seems pretty stupid to me. I wouldn't do that. It seems dangerous or something. Then
Right.
you can talk to your kids like that. But yeah, I mean, social media, I think, it's incredibly new, and it's there's so many things we're learning from it, and so many ways we're growing and adapting to all the good and bad of it as well.
And the fact that, of course, everyone has a megaphone on social media,
Yes,
right?
exactly, exactly. Everyone does have a mega. That's what I've been saying as well recently. I've been saying, people have been asking me to describe social media, and it's like social media is like being in a bar. So in a bar in real life, you only really focus on the conversation that's happening to you, in front of you, the person you're with. And there might be a million other conversations and the stupidest stuff you've ever heard in your life being said everywhere else in the bar, but you can't really tune it in. On social media, every single one of those conversations is crystal clear and presented as just as important as the person talking to you. And it gets really hard to kind of selectively uh, perceive what you need to perceive. But I mean, I think we're getting better at that. We're getting desensitized to the din in the best possible way.
Right. You talk about a very good strategy for dealing with trolls, for example, on social media.
Yeah, I mean, I've had as shocking as this may be, some people don't like me, which is really, I know it's
I know
odd to
it's
even say
yeah.
those
I
words.
should have been sitting down for that one.
You should have. It's a bit of a shocker. Um, but yeah, I mean, I've had more than my share of hate comments and terrible comments in the past, and currently as well. And every now and then I get suckered. Every now and then, I mean, like once every 3 years, I get suckered into trying to get into a dialogue, and I immediately regret it. Because first of all, they're either not worth the time. They also or they could be 8 years old, or they could this could be the brightest point in their day, is trying to make fun of someone else because their day is terrible. And any way you cut it, it's just never worth getting into the dialogue. Or they're a robot. That's the other sort of option, is that they're not even a person, and you
Right.
just look like an idiot. It's like you're fighting with an ironing board. Who cares? Um, so yeah, I think that chapter is all about just not engaging, because it's never worth it. I've only had 2 times in the 10 plus years I've been doing this full time, and I'm online a lot. My on screen or whatever it's called, screen time report on iPhone would be terrifying to a lot of people, I'm sure. Um, but it's part of my job, and I'm on there sort of consuming stuff constantly. And I think only 2 times in the 10 plus years I've been doing it full time have I actually engaged, and it's worked out okay. I've had one guy say the music's too loud, and said something else. He wasn't that mean at all, but I engaged with him, and he was like, "You've got to pull down the EQ at 200 kilohertz." And I was like, "That's really smart. I appreciate that. Thank you."
Thank
And so I
you.
have, ever since then, I've been doing that. It's like 4 years ago. And another one was a kid in Scotland who was just like saying the worst stuff. And I remember engaging with him going, "Don't waste your time trying to make fun of me. I'm an old man compared to you. Go out there and make your own stuff." And he did. He started doing his own content. He's successful at it, which is great.
Oh,
But
that's
I mean, apart,
fantastic.
which is awesome. But don't let that fool you. Don't waste your time. That's like winning the scratch tickets. Those hardly ever happens.
Right.
Just don't waste your time.
Okay, fair enough. Well, thank you for that advice. Now, yeah, you brought up Scotland, and that think of another fellow humorous Canadian, Mike Myers,
Mm,
and he had something to say about I think it was Scotland. All Scottish cuisine is a dare,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
then you were inspired by that
Yeah,
to talk about Canadian cuisine.
exactly. A Canadian cuisine is to me is an act of defiance. It's I think in the harsh elements that we survive in, we throw caution to the wind and eat things like poutine and butter tarts. None of that stuff is healthy, uh, and we're like, we don't care. Listen, it's cold out. It's minus 35 degrees. Go to hell. We're gonna have poutine and wash it down with butter tarts and beer.
I love that. And then there is a fantastic section of the book on Canada, and you do have the one of the secrets, of course, as to why are Canadians so nice?
I'm not going to reveal it. I'm
Oh,
not
because
going to reveal
people
it.
will have to buy the book.
Yeah, I'm not going to reveal it. Exactly. I'm not going to reveal it.
Ooh, that's tricky. I love that. But I'm going to ask if you have any advice for writers or creators out there, whether they want to create social media, whether they're looking,
Mm.
writing either nonfiction or fiction, whatever. What's any advice you'd offer to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a whole raft of advice I could sort of give you and get into the nitty-gritty and the details, but I think the most important thing to remember as someone who creates anything, whether it be paintings or music or books or poems or videos on social media or whatever, it doesn't matter what you create. Don't make art for artists. It is a losing game. All you're doing is competing with your peers, and usually, especially in the creative industries, your peers are usually poor, so who cares what they think? They can't buy your stuff. It doesn't matter. Um, but yeah, no, I think that's the don't make art for artists, which actually started out initially as don't make music for musicians, and this notion that if you focus too much on what will impress other musicians when you make music, you end up making music that's not really enjoyable for most people. It's just going to be appreciated for its proficiency or technicality by people who also create music. And the same goes for art. Like don't write to impress. If you're writing stuff, don't write to impress other writers, because who cares what they think? You want someone, if you're writing something in Waterloo, you want someone in Idaho to say, this is the best thing I've read. I love it so much, or it got me through a really hard time. And then you're doing the right thing. Absolutely.
Right. Well, thanks. You gave me an awesome soundbite that I can share and post on social media, because just me posting it is not at all an endorsement in any way, shape, or form, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But I have shared, obviously shared a lot of your stuff, which is designed to be shared and
Sure.
and reshared and reshared, which is how things go viral, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole game. Is it's been, life is marketing, and if people don't know about something, they don't know about it. So
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. People don't know, they don't know. You got to make them know.
Well, let's make them know. Where can they find out more about you? Where can they find out more about your great new book?
So you can find me on social media, pretty much any platform, at Brittlestar. Just look for my smiling, bespectacled face. I guess I'm not really smiling, smirking, bespectacled face. And you can find the book at your favorite bookstore. If you need to find more information where to find it, you can also go to stupidpocalypse.com or stupidbook.us if you're in America.
Oh my God, that is fantastic. Stewart, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It was a riot. Thanks.
I wanted to reflect on just a few things from the conversation. Now, first of all, before we began recording, I had the opportunity to do something we don't often get a chance to do. We don't often get a chance to talk to the people who have inspired us. And of course, Stewart, Brittlestar, and the whole family have inspired my partner Liz and I. Now, obviously, with the humor and the parodies and all the stuff that Stewart does, he's inspired me to become a creator, as I discovered throughout the course of the pandemic when I was struggling with writer's block. I re-embraced the fact that I'm a storyteller, and it doesn't matter what medium it comes from. So that's a cool thing. But I also got to share with him how much he inspired my partner Liz, who is a K-6 principal, and particularly the morning show that he was doing with his wife Shannon. Liz had discovered that just around the time of the pandemic. And she was dealing with the fact that all of the teachers on her staff were remote, and everyone was suddenly having to work remote, which is a really stressful situation for K-6. So the kids and the parents and the teachers were all in a very unique situation. So Liz did two sort of morning programs. She started a morning program for the parents and the kids, which was almost like the morning announcements. And she's continued that to this day, even though they've been back in school for quite a while. But she also did a daily show, a team building exercise for the teachers. It was about a 10 to 15 minute show that took place just before the school day started, almost like a stand-up team meeting prior to the day. It basically allowed people to connect. And this was called Isolation Station. And that was the first iteration of the show. So her and her vice principal did a variety show, almost like a talk show, very similar, to the morning program that Stewart and Shannon did. And it was just meant to bring the teachers together. So she did different exercises. She provided updates as to what was going on, but then allowed the teachers to participate. So they would do things like sharing, like, what's the oldest thing in your freezer? And they'd send screenshots, or what did you do this weekend? To, because he couldn't get together with other people. So the crafts and the hobbies and the different things that they were doing. So the teachers got a chance to share some things. They had some jokes and some games. They had guests. They had the mayors on. They had so many different celebrities come on as guest speakers, both for the class that was visible for the parents and the teachers, but then also and the students, I should say, but also for the teachers themselves, which is more of it was a private show only available for the teachers. But boy, did that ever help with the team building, particularly because Liz had only been at this school for a matter of months before the pandemic happened. She had just started in that previous September, so she was just getting to know the staff, and then all of a sudden they're forced to be at home. So Liz was very appreciative for the inspiration that Stewart and Shannon provided in terms of doing that show. I'm very lucky I had the opportunity to be her Ed McMahon for a while when she was between vice principals, and that was a lot of fun because it gave me a regular routine of something to do that was kind of fun and cheeky. I could share some dad jokes. I was, I could be Liz was the straight person, and I could provide some of the humor for the episodes because she had a theme every day, and I always misinterpreted the theme, but she didn't the theme, but I didn't know. She didn't know, I should say, what the misinterpretation was going to be. So when the camera came on me, I was always doing something, misinterpreting the team in some way to hopefully inspire a little bit of humor. But the other things I want to reflect on were the parallel between Stewart and his wife Shannon, and finally convincing Shannon to get in front of the camera. Well, money, okay, that was the thing. And I still don't know what it was that finally inspired my partner Liz, who for years loved creating videos and loved creating video content, but never got in front of the video content. It wasn't until during the pandemic when I came up with a parody song idea for a readaptation of Stuck in the Middle with You to Stuck in This House Here with You, that I said, we should do this as a duet, and here's how I visualize the song going. And Liz looked at me like I had three heads. But then I think it was the next day or the day after, as she was getting ready for work in the morning, she said, I've been thinking about it. I have some ideas for how we could do the video. And that was the clincher. It was just the two of us in the house. We spent, I think it was Easter weekend, putting the video together and just having a grand time. So day one was the recording, where we, fought over the recording and did take after take after take to get it right. And then the second day was the video. But we had an absolute blast doing that.
Snores to the left of me.
Dad jokes to my right.
Here I am, stuck in this house here with you.
Well, we started isolation, and you're sad that you're a hungry man.
And the outside world is calling. Stop you in your tracks and say,
Please.
2 meters back.
Please.
2 meters back.
And then we ended up doing some other parody videos together.
From the couple that brought you Stuck in This House Here With You, a new collection of isolation parody songs. Still stuck, still with you, still in this house.
Sharing broadband streams, that is what we do. As we keep an eye on our download queue. Stay away from me when I'm on a Zoom, and we'll respect one another. Aha. From one meeting to another. Aha.
You just need to hush or go in another room. All over the house I can hear the sound of all that you chew.
And then, of course, Liz agreed to co-host the Aurora Awards with me, Canada's Science Fiction and Fantasy Awards, and we've done it 3 times now, which has been absolutely amazing because Liz has, who is a fantastic video producer, has finally gotten in front of the camera. So again, probably inspiration from watching Stewart and Shannon. The other thing I wanted to reflect on, which I think is so important, is the advice that Stewart lays down for us creators, for us writers, for us storytellers. And that is basically not making the art for other artists, but making it for the consumers, for the fans. And that's a really important thing, particularly when we get into writing, because we want, potentially to impress other writers with just how great we are at crafting our prose. But at the end of the day, focusing on the consumer, focusing on the person who's going to enjoy that content. It's kind of funny. I'm listening to the autobiography of Geddy Lee, lead singer from Rush, my favorite band in the entire universe. And the memoir is great as Geddy's talking about their musical stylings and even how, they were creating the music more to amazing music, but they were not creating it for it to be music that could be enjoyed easily by people. That's why Rush fans, once you cross the threshold and really get into it, you really can see the intricacies and just love and enjoy the music. But it's never going to be something, except for a few hits here and there, that are going to play on the top 40 charts. But when we're thinking about our art, when we're thinking about the things we want to create, thinking about the consumer first is so valuable. It's so important. And in my case, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but in my case, focusing in on the nichest market possible seems to be the best case. Now, I'll take an example. For example, when I got the idea, because I saw the cover of the book, The Canadian Mounted, when I saw that on Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and then I later saw it on Deadpool 2, I always focus on books in movies and TV shows. So I was very fascinated by it. And I didn't realize it was a real book until I started to do the research for the book of trivia about planes, trains, and automobiles. But I didn't expect that this book was going to sell more than a handful of copies to really big nerds like me who recognized the book from the scene in the movie. And that was a game changer for me. When I realized that I was not writing this book for anything other than thinking about the big diehard nerdy fans like me, I was only focusing on this very niche, this very narrow market. Little did I realize just how many people found that novelty exciting, how many people found that novelty interesting, how many people wanted to take pictures of themselves holding up the book at airports as they were traveling, doing selfies in the Del Griffith style. It so then inspired me to want to turn to one of my next favorite movies from the 80s that I watch every year almost religiously, and that's Die Hard. And so again, on the 35th anniversary of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, I released The Canadian Mounted, and on the 35th anniversary of the theatrical release of Die Hard, one of the best Christmas movies of all time, I released a Yippee-Ki-Yay Mother Bleeper. And I am already working on the next book of trivia of one of those movies that I watch every single year and have probably watched hundreds of times. Those are books written specifically with the audience in mind, and a very narrow audience, of the focus of the diehard nerds who, when they see the image, they hear the phrase, they know exactly what it is, and they want to be part of it. Not thinking about the masses, not trying to impress other writers, not trying to create something that is this magnificent product or the great American novel. And I've taken that approach, of course, when I go back to my Canadian werewolf novels. When I go back to those books, I'm thinking about, what is it that drew people into these books? Where are the comments that I'm getting from the readers who really resonate with Canadian Werewolf? Well, it's that it's unlike other werewolf tales. They really enjoy the wry humor of the main character, Michael, particularly the situations that this alpha wolf / beta man gets himself into, and the trouble and the humorous moments that he ends up finding himself in. And so making sure that, I have tense moments and scary things that happen and tragedies and things always go wrong for him, I do return to the humor, because that's an element from Michael's character from these books that really resonates with readers. No, they're not fine literature. They're not high literature. You can look at them and tear them apart because the language and the prose is not magnificently poetic and beautiful. They're just a story that's meant to resonate with a particular reader in mind. And that's something we need to learn and to focus on when we're looking at our own writing. Are you writing to try to impress other writers, other artists, other storytellers? Or are you writing the stories meant specifically for a very specific audience? It's a fundamental element of marketing, and of course, one that Stewart beautifully reminds us of. Well, that's it for this episode. That's it for these reflections. Thank you so much for joining me. You can always leave comments over for this over on YouTube, on my YouTube channel where this is posted, but also over at starkreflections.ca. And so, until next week and next episode, this is Mark Leslie Lefebvre wishing you great writing and good Stark Reflections.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.